Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. For this video I wanted to talk a little bit about CGC, CBCS, and PGX, how I see them when it comes to in comparison to one another. Now I know that this has been a debate among comic book collectors, most importantly those that go out and have their books slabbed. What is better? Who is better? CGC, CBCS, PGX? Who is more strict with their grading? Who is not? And who overgrades? All those sort of questions. Well, for me, I have mostly CGC books in my collection. I have maybe a handful of CBCS, and I only have a couple PGX. I've had other PGX books in my collection before, just as I've had CBCS and CGC that have been sold off for one reason or another. So I have some experience with all three, but I mainly have most of my experience with CGC. So that's the one that I can really speak to the most. But I can give you my own input, my own opinion, okay, this is just an opinion, on the others as well. For me, in my opinion, all three companies have done their fair share of pretty accurate grading, undergrading, and overgrading. That is just my experience. For those of you out there that have dealt more exclusively with one or two of those, you might disagree with me or agree with me. Some of you that are big into CBCS may say that it is your belief that CBCS grades more strictly than the other two. CGC may say, a CGC fan might say the same thing. I can only give you what I have seen in my collection, in other people's collections that I've watched on YouTube, out going to conventions, having other books in my hands that have come through my comic book store that I've seen, and all of that. I can only give you my experience. But speaking to my experience, speaking to my collection, I have a couple examples here. Now, I've taken three sets of examples where I think that all three companies have been accurate, and other times when they have not been accurate. In really talking about when it comes to that I think that they've overgraded or undergraded books, and I have some examples. It may be a little hard to see here the way I put it up against the screen, and the glare and all that stuff, but just please bear with me. So here I have a few books in my lap here that I'll show. I have a CGC, a CBCS, and a PGX. Now, in my opinion, these books here, I feel that the companies accurately graded these books. Okay? Again, if you had these books in your hands, you may disagree. But in my opinion, I think that these books were graded accurately. So let's take a look at the first example. Here we have Amazing Spider-Man 14, first appearance of the Green Goblin 4.0. Now, if you see some of the flaws on it, now, like I said, you're not going to see all of them in this video. You need to have the book in hand, the slab in hand, and really take a look at it for yourselves. So you're not really going to get that. So you just take my word for it. I think this was accurately graded. I do. I think they did a fairly good job with grading this. Sure, I would love to say that this is really a 5 if it were pressed or something like that, but it's not. It's not. I think CGC did a pretty good job with this one. All right, let's move to CBCS. Here's another one that I think that CBCS did a pretty good job with grading. I agree with the grade. And we have Detective Comics 359. They gave it a 6.0. I bought this about 6 years ago. Looking at it, obviously I've owned it for 6 years, like I said, so I've seen it many, many times, looked at front and back. I think they did a pretty good job with this. Now, again, some of you may say, hey, if you crack that open, you press it, you send it to CGC, you might get a 7. Maybe. I don't know. I don't intend to do that anytime soon, but I think that the graders at CBCS for this particular book did a pretty good job. And the last example in this category is Amazing Spider-Man number 10, First Appearance of the Enforcers, graded by PGX. Now, of the three companies, I've never sent anything off to PGX to get graded like I did with CGC many times, CBCS a couple times. I've never done it with PGX. I've always just bought these flat out, okay? Here's a book that I think is genuinely a 4.0. I mean, it probably could use a press. Who knows? It might get a bump. But I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. I would not be surprised if this truly is a 4.0. I think I said in a previous video that if I crack this thing out, it might get a higher grade. You know, maybe. But as I look at it, you know, it sure might improve some things, but I think there are some things that will not be improved now that I look at it, now that I really take a closer look at it than just me glancing over it last time, that probably will not bring it to a 4.5 or a 5 with CGC or CBCS. I think it is a genuinely 4.0 at a good spot. So I think PGX did a pretty good job with this one. So those are some examples of books that were graded that I think are on the money from all three companies. Now the reason why I'm going to go over some more things, but the reason why I'm going over this is to show you that, you know, hey, anyone can make an argument about this, that some grade less, some grade better, some grade on the money. And I agree, but I'm just talking about what I have in my collection. Now let's see, what do I want to go over now? Okay. I have a few more right here in this category of books that I think I only have CBCS and CGC examples here. Like I said, because I only have a couple PGX books, okay? So I don't really have a whole load of examples for you at the moment in that grading company. But here I have 2 books from CGC and 1 book from CBCS. In my opinion, in this category, I think the grading companies undergraded them. I think they should be a little higher, maybe just a little higher than the grade that they got. And I'm going to start off with this one. I've said it before, and I still agree with what I said before about this one. This got a 5.0. I don't understand why it got a 5.0. I have the grader's notes for it. I mean, you know, it mentions generic things. Sometimes those grader notes from CGC are very accurate, and some of them are just not accurate. And multiple creases on spine. Okay, I see a few, yeah. And that's it. Among a few other little things. It's a really, really nice copy. And I don't understand why it got a 5.0. I think this is at least a 6.5. Again, I'm not a professional grader. Most of us are not professional graders, but I can grade somewhat. You know, I do have some understanding of grading, and I don't agree with this grade. I think that this is an example when CGC undergraded a book. Here's another example of CGC undergrading a book. I've said it before in another video. Amazing Spider-Man number 3 got a 3.0. It does have its flaws, obviously. It wouldn't be in this 3.0 range. But I think it is a little higher. It may, in my opinion, I thought originally it was a 4.0. It could very well be a 3.5. I don't think it's any higher than a 4.0. Definitely not. But I do think it's higher than a 3.0. Or at least I thought it would be higher than a 3.0. So in my opinion, again, now this is a book that I've owned raw. You know, most of these books here I haven't owned raw. Some of them I have. Like the next one, I've owned raw. But a lot of them I haven't. So in this case here, I've actually owned it, looked through it, saw what it looks like on the inside, the centerfold, the cover, the staples, all that stuff. And I just don't agree with the 3.0. And the last one, like I said, is CBCS. I don't have a PGX one. This one. I think it's a 9.0, personally. It might even be a 9.2. But CBCS gave it an 8.5. You know, it's an all-black cover, so you can spot the flaws very quickly. And this is another example of a book that I've owned before I actually had it slabbed. I submitted this at the East Coast Comic Con 4/16/2016 after I had James O'Barr sign this. I think it's at least a 9.0, but obviously I'm wrong. Obviously CBCS doesn't agree. And those are some examples of books that I think were undergraded. Now let me go over the last category for this video when it comes to grading. The 3 books here where I think the companies, all the grading companies, overgraded. Starting off with this one right here. Grendel #1. It's got an 8.5. No way. Look at that. You can see the waviness here. Now, that may not be enough to give it a 5.0 or a 6.0, but I don't think it's an 8.5. Maybe if it were pressed, it would be an 8.5. But no, it's not just the waviness. Look at the spine. Look at this. Look at this right here. Look at that. Am I being too strict? I don't know. Tell me. But you know, the back is all right. You know, it's no big deal. But I don't think it's maybe an 8, maybe a 7.5, 8.0. That's where I would put at it. Maybe I'm being too strict. I don't think so. See the corner up here? There's a little crease. Oh, sorry for the glare. I said you'd be glare. I just don't agree with this. I think it was overgraded. Now let's go to PGX. This got a PGX 7.0. I don't agree with that. I think it's a 6.0 personally. And just looking at the condition of the spine. I mean, the spine's okay. You know, it's not eaten up. But there are several color breaks, and I don't even know what that is right there. I've been questioning that for years. I've had this for many, many years. The back cover, it's all right. You know, it's no big deal. But I just don't think this is a 7.0. I think maybe it's at the very least a 6.5. Now, maybe that's not such a big deal, right? Going down half a point. But I'm just giving you an example of what I think. You know, I just don't think it's high as 7. Whether it's half a point higher or a full point higher, it's still not where I think it should be. Now, here's another example of a last example for this video before I talk about something else briefly and I end the video. Last example of something that's been overgraded. I've said this before. I originally thought that this was a 5.55. Now maybe that's really undergrading it. Maybe it's truly a little higher than a 5.5. But I don't think it's a 7.0. At the very least, maybe it's a 6.0. You see that? You could see right there the color breaks on the spine. There's another one. There's another one. I mean, yeah, 7.0s, it's a 7.0. It has color breaks on the spine. But when I think it's so prominent as some of the ones that you just saw and others that you're not seeing on this, I don't think it really should be a 7.0. I think this is another example of a book that probably should be, that was probably overgraded. Just being honest. You know, I could look at my books and say, oh, wow, yeah, I totally agree with that 9.0. Or I agree with that high grade copy. But I also have to be honest with some of them that were graded that I don't think are really that high. But what can you do? Now, as I close this video, those are just some examples. As I close this video, I know one of the big things is, okay, if you were to get something graded, having said everything you just said in this video, what company would you go for? Well, I would say that the company to go for as of right now, 2020, May, June 2020, whenever I release this video, I would say CGC. You say, well, why? You just showed us books that you thought were overgraded. How's that accurate? Well, it's like I said at the beginning of the video. The other companies probably have that too. Definitely have that. Not probably, definitely have that too. I think all 3 companies are guilty of that. I think all 3 companies can do good work, but I also think that all 3 companies are guilty of overgrading and undergrading. It's a subjective thing. Human errors are made. Human flaws. What I see as a 7.0, you may see as a 6.0. Or what I see as a 6.0, you may see as a 7.0. There's a lot of subjectivity in this. So that sometimes, you know, makes the landscape on deciding on who to go to when it comes to getting an accurate grade in a slabbing company kind of murky. But if you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, if you're looking to sell, and that's what a lot of people like to do, they want to get these things slabbed and then they want to eventually sell them. I would say at the moment CGC, because they get the most bang for their buck. You watch ETA Nix, he had that wonderful show where he would show CGC versus CBCS. I think it was 9 times out of 10 that CGC sold more. And of course, you have those occasions where CBCS will sell more for a CGC. Absolutely, you'll have more of those in the future. But I think you'll have more CGC that sells more for the future. Sells more than CBCS. So if you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, I would say that. But as for who grades better, it's a toss-up, personally. I do think, though, I will say this, though, I do think that PGX, more often than not, doesn't grade as, in my opinion, doesn't grade as well as the other two. I'm just going to throw that out there. You may disagree. That's fine. That's just my opinion, all right, based on what, I mean, like I said, I have very little, but I've had others in the past, and I've seen others from my local comic book shop and other people that I know and other places. From what I've seen, PGX doesn't always grade as accurately as the other two, even though the other two sometimes don't grade accurately as well. But I think PGX is more guilty of it than the other two, and that's my opinion on the grading companies. I usually go for CGC, and that's just the way I go about it. Doesn't mean that's the way you need to go about it, but it's something that you'd have to ask yourself, like, well, what do you think is most likely to sell for more? No, I think CGC. Thank you for watching, everybody. Be safe and take care.